All right, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee for the City of San Clemente, Wednesday, April 28th meeting. We have one set of minutes to approve for the April 14th, 2021 meeting. Michael or Jen, do you have any changes or a motion?
But I do have some change I'd like to propose on the second page.
Okay. Very good.
There are 7 bullet points. My comments is about the 3rd and 6th. I suggest to combine them together. So for the 3rd comment, the first sentence is all right. And then, but the second sentence says, stated a preference for a number of things. But during the discussion, that was the first half of the my remarks. My real point was, although I prefer those things, they're not the subject, they shouldn't be the subject of the design review because we should focus on the gate design. So I simply suggest we remove this one and move it and move the rest of the item 6 and combine them. But on item 6, I also needed some changes here. It says, suggest the applicant consider replacing. My suggestion was to consider adding. In other words, suggest the applicant consider adding a wrought iron gate in front of the wood access door to provide more visibility into the courtyard. So the 2 bullet points after combination would read like this. Expressed concern that the revisions do not sufficiently improve visibility into the courtyard. Suggested the applicant consider adding a wrought iron gate in front of the wood access door facing El Camino Real to provide more visibility into the courtyard.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, on the 3rd bullet point, you are suggesting that the subcommittee remove the 2nd sentence and
yes,
instead replace that with the 2nd to the last bullet point.
No, the 2nd to the last bullet point also needs to be revised.
Okay.
Instead of replacing, we're going to say, suggested the applicant consider adding a wrought iron gate in front of the wood access door facing El Camino Real to provide more visibility into the courtyard.
Well, it's not there in the first. So you're hanging on adding versus replacing only because it's not there now, correct, Commissioner Wu?
Well, replacing means removing the wood door and replace it with a wrought iron door. I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I think we did discuss that though.
I don't know if you suggested replacing it, maybe you did, but my comment was always just to add a wrought iron door in front of a wood door. That would allow them to block the sound and the sight line into the courtyard when they need to, but keep it open, visually open when they don't need to. Similar to the wrought iron in front of the sliding door. They're just more operable.
I'm fine with that. I mean, the approval's done, and I don't think that substantially changes anything, so that's fine, as far as I'm concerned. Michael, do you have any comment on
that? No, I don't have any comment. That's fine with me as well. If
Yeah.
I mean, we're just talking about what was discussed, and I'm trying to draw from memory I don't remember that verbiage, whether it was replacing or adding. In my mind, it's always an add because we're talking about this in concept. There's nothing there. I think if it was replacing, it was meant to be to replace the door. But Commissioner, you're saying adding the wrought iron in addition to the door. That's what you recall suggesting during the meeting.
Yes, yes. I even suggest the wrought iron door to be swing outward and leave the wood door to be able to swing inward. So both can be operated.
Yeah. Well, if we go back into the record and look, just like any other time, I'm sure staff is going to just confirm that language and correct accordingly. So I have no issue with that. Yeah, of course.
Stephanie, are you comfortable that we're not giving the applicant a different interpretation than what they went home with?
Yes, I am comfortable. They did request to obtain a copy of the DRC minutes after it gets finalized. So we will certainly send them a copy of this, and I'll let them know that that if everybody is good with these changes, that this is, these minutes were approved by the subcommittee today.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
That I move to approve the City of St. Clemente minutes of the regular meeting of Design Review Subcommittee April 14 with the modification I just stated.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Motion by Wu, second by Blackwell. We'll do a head count vote. Commissioner Blackwell?
Aye.
Commissioner Wu?
Aye.
And Commissioner Crandall is also an aye, so it passes unanimously. I am going to read a little preamble to what the Design Review Subcommittee is for the applicant. And is the second party here the owner or another group of the architectural firm?
We're the architects.
Both? Both of you are? Okay. Well, the purpose of the subcommittee is to provide direction, insight, concerns, and options to the applicant on how the project best complies with the city design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee is not an approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission and Zoning Administrator regarding a project's compliance with the city design guidelines. Each of the subcommittee members will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based upon written design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee will not design the project for the applicant, nor will the member always agree on the best course of action. The applicant can then assess the input and incorporate any changes accordingly, with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Okay. We've done our minutes approval. We have one project to review today, a minor cultural heritage permit 2380, 129 Avenida de la Grula, Cameron Edition. And Stephanie is presenting it for the city. Stephanie?
Yes, that's correct. Give me 1 moment to get the PowerPoint presentation up on the
All right.
screen. Let's see. Bear with me just a moment. I'm not used to this. I'm usually used to IT taking care of this for us.
No problem at all.
Tara, is there a way that I could have this full screen rather than showing this in just the regular PowerPoint view? I had it just a moment, but for some reason it stopped.
Yes, there is a way to do it. If you bring it back up on screen, there should be a view tab there to the right, or to your left. Sorry, not all the way to the right. Next to Bluebeam. So in the top ribbon there, it says File, Home, Insert Design, etc. If you scroll over a little bit, there's a view.
Okay.
And then it should have a slideshow option. Oh, I'm sorry. There's actually a slideshow tab there above, next to animations.
Stephanie,
Oh, I see.
There we
Okay.
go.
I've lost my image, so I'm going to probably have to relog on here.
Commissioner Crandall, are you not seeing any image?
No.
Okay, so it looks like we lost him. So I think we'll just give it a moment for Commissioner Crandall to rejoin us.
Okay.
Okay, let's try that one more time. Are you seeing just the cover slide of the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I don't see any of the toolbars on it or anything.
Okay, great, wonderful. Okay, now we can get started. So good afternoon, Chair Crandall and members of the subcommittee. The item before you today is for an addition to an existing single-family residence in the residential medium zone. The existing residence is a 1,500 square foot single-family home on a 4,500 square foot lot. It is currently a one-story home in height, and it is non-conforming. Specifically, the front yard garage setback is 16.5 feet, where 18 feet is required. The property also has a one-car garage, meaning that it is non-conforming with regard to the city's parking standards. The property does back up to a historic home at the rear, and the Planning Commission previously approved a cultural heritage permit to allow a small addition to this home. The applicant proposes to construct a second-story addition about 500 square feet in size. This would bring the total to 1,000. The proposed addition also includes a wraparound balcony facing the street and a roof deck. Additionally, the garage and driveway would be expanded to comply with the city's current parking standards. Various improvements are proposed to the exterior, including new landscaping and a front yard deck. MCHP applications do not always get presented to the design review subcommittee. However, in this particular case, the zoning code specifically requires DRSC to review applications for non-conforming homes when an addition over 50% of the floor area when that is proposed to a non-conforming home. So in this case, the code states that the purpose of the DRSC review is to ensure that additions are in character with the neighborhood and are consistent with the city's design guidelines. This site plan illustrates the proposed addition in relation to the neighboring historic home. The addition is oriented towards the front of the property, furthest away from the historic building, approximately 73 feet away. Because the historic resource is located on a different street, Avenida Palayo, the proposed addition will not affect public views or sight lines of the historic resource. Overall, the proposed placement of the addition respects the privacy, sun, and light exposure of the abutting historic resource. Staff has not received any public comments. And so really just to summarize, this project is consistent with the city's design guidelines and the zoning code. The proposed addition is compatible with the overall neighborhood character, scale, and massing. The addition is oriented towards the front of the property, furthest away from the historic resource. Last, the project would bring the parking, it would bring the parking into compliance with current standards. As I mentioned, it currently has a one-car garage, and it would be expanded to a two-car garage. So for these reasons, staff supports the project and does not recommend any changes to the design as proposed. We do welcome any feedback, and staff will work with the applicant to address any suggested changes prior to the zoning administrator hearing. I do want to introduce the two members of the applicant team that are participating on this meeting today. We have Stephen Ball and Charles O. Young. They both represent the architect for this project. So that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, would the architect like to make a presentation also?
That we it was a toughie. It's basically a 2-bedroom house. The owner has 2 young sons that are getting bigger, twin boys, and needed to expand. I usually try and convince clients that if they're going to expand, if they need an extra bedroom, to do a new master, because most of these homes are deficient as far as contemporary use masters are concerned. We knew we had a sensitive rear neighbor, so we selected to move the addition to the front of the house. We wanted to keep it in a cottage, albeit a little bit more plantation style, with the look of the upstairs being well modulated, balconied all around for sun control on that southwest elevation. When we got up on the high pitched roof and got a ladder up there, we, believe it or not, we saw the harbor and the headlands. So, you know, we decided also to add the roof deck that you may see up there. It's not accessible from the exterior. There's a hatch and a ladder to get up there. So it's not something that is going to get used a great deal. In looking at the parking situation, we thought that the street is so challenged right now with all the multifamily across the street and surrounding us, that we had enough room to get in and maneuver to the 2-car garage without requesting expanding the existing curb cut and apron. So we elected to keep that and go in as wide as we could without blocking off the entire front, and still have a decent entry. The owner likes to come out in front and look at the street and watch the people walking by in the cars. So she opted to open up the front and wants to come out and sit there on that deck as well. It's modest in size. Our initial read of the code was that we weren't going to have to go through this process, but then, you know, we were made aware of the historic house behind us, and we certainly understand that. We felt that it was important to retain the residential character, although the street's very mixed with the high density 2-story across the street and around us and behind us. So we felt we fit in pretty good, and it was important to try and do that. My test is that when you drive by this house on completion, that kind of looks like it was always there. We didn't opt to style change or go contemporary or go heavy Mediterranean. We just wanted to keep that cottage feel, but again, give it more of that island or plantation look. You got any questions? That's why we're here.
Thank you, Stephen. I'll go ahead and start. Stephanie, I've got one question for you, and then another question for both of you. Mm-hmm. We really appreciate complying with the parking, but in effect, we've increased the width of the non-conforming element by 10 feet. We're doing just a cultural heritage permit, which wouldn't address the increase in non-conformance. And since it's not discussed, and this is going to zoning administrator, I think it should be clarified to us as well as the zoning, whoever's sitting at the zoning administrator seat, that the advantage of complying with parking may outweigh the increase in nonconformance of the front yard setback width? Or does this need maybe an administrative minor exception?
So I'll answer the question as far as, procedurally what's required in order to request an addition to a non-conforming residence, but it actually no longer requires a specific discretionary permit, mainly because as part of the batch zoning amendments that was recently prepared by city staff, staff was looking for opportunities to streamline reviews, to be able to, allow staff to be able to review more of these things administratively, especially when it comes to, single family residential homes in the city. And we were previously receiving a lot of applications for these additions to non-conforming homes. As you know, especially in those historic neighborhoods, we do have quite a number of properties that are a little bit non-conforming and don't quite meet our standard setback requirements. So through that overall effort to streamline the code, as well as prepare a number of different amendments and revisions to the zoning code, additions like this don't actually, to a non-conforming home, don't require a separate, we previously used to require a minor architectural permit specifically for additions to non-conforming homes. So that's no longer something that the code requires. But I think really what I want to focus in on is that one of the things that we were considering when we looked at this particular project was really just the ability to park vehicles in the driveway. And the property itself is really unique because the the property line is actually set back a good number of feet behind the curb face, as well as behind the sidewalk, so that even though it says that it's a 16-foot setback from the garage, in reality, when you look at it, it looks like a normal standard driveway. If you do look at Google Street View, there is an SUV that's parked on the driveway itself. So really from just like a practical standpoint, it is still a usable driveway where cars can park there and not encroach and hang out into the sidewalk. So I think for those reasons, that was something that staff was not really concerned about, the fact that they are, increasing a garage that is still technically non-conforming with regard to the setback. So I hope that answers your question, but if there's something specifically that I didn't touch upon, or if you would like the applicant to touch upon, we're happy to.
Well, that's pretty much what I was anticipating you would say, but I think just for clarity and for the next people that review it, it would be helpful if that explanation was either in the staff report or memorialized in the minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Just so nobody can say, hey, why didn't you consider, the increase in non-conformance? Well, there's a reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, duly noted.
Okay, and this is for Stephanie and Stephen. I've gotten rid of all my code books since I retired. And my question is, access to the roof deck by ladder. Is there a maximum size that deck can be to be accessed by a ladder?
That's a good one. I haven't looked at that.
So I would think, Stephanie, since we don't know if there's legal access out of the area of the roof deck, or if we can even call it a roof deck, it's more of a viewing balcony or whatever we want to call it. But being accessed by a ladder, it may be limited to a number of square feet. And I want to make sure that that's addressed before it goes to the zoning administrator.
Okay, that's a good one.
Okay, Michael, I see you're unmuted. Would you like to ask some questions of staff and the applicant?
Yes, thank you. Stephanie, what is the height of that viewing deck parapet from top of deck to top of the parapet, if any?
Sure. So
You mean standing on the deck? What is the height of the parapet?
Yeah.
42 inches.
That's 42 inches. Is that high enough to qualify as a standard height for a railing?
Yes.
Okay. And why aren't we calling it a roof deck? Why are you committing to that as a roof deck? So that's going to be the sole purpose of that round element?
It was to be the sole purpose. Now,
Okay.
if we exceed the square footage that's accessible by ladder, we'll either consider removing it or sticking the condensing units up there or something.
Okay. Is there lack of space on the ground for the condensing units?
No.
There's plenty of space down there for them?
Yes.
Okay. And did you consider putting windows in the garage on the walls anywhere, any sort of openings or relief to those walls at all?
No, did not consider that.
Okay. Is that something the applicant would be okay with?
If you're concerned with breaking up the mass along that side, I'm sure you would. We've got two doors. We've got a door on either side. I could, a window would be fine.
Okay. And Stephanie, do we have thank you, by the way.
Sure.
Stephanie, do we have a view of the south side of that garage, south face of the house, the addition?
I do not believe there is that view. Stephen,
I
do you know?
believe the perspective on sheet A2.02, you get a view of that wall, don't you?
I was hoping that we had something we could put on the screen here.
Okay.
Do we have the plan? We do have the plans, right?
Yes, we do. Let me, what was that sheet, Commissioner Crandall?
A2.
A2.01 as well as an aerial on A2.02.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
You have
good.
that wall.
Let's look at 01 first, if we can get it.
Is everybody able to see the rendering on A201?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just looking at that front face and considering all three sides. I want to see if there's any relief proposed there. Looks like there is not at this point. Okay. Okay, that's all I have to ask at this time.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Wu.
Yes, just a few quick questions. I hope I have a drawing that at scale I can measure. I know it's usually done. Is it going to be standard procedure from now? We only get a reduction. Stephanie?
I'm sorry, was that a question posed to me?
We don't have a scale drawing, a full size or half size that allows us to measure something. This is not at the scale when you reduce it to 11 by 17.
That's correct. We did not request plans drawn to scale.
We typically have them.
Well, I do apologize. That's not something that we requested the applicant to submit for the DRC packets.
Well,
Okay.
these drawings are to scale.
Well, the drawing must be at scale. Are you saying that at the 11 by 17, they're still at scale?
Well, I think what we need, or I think Jen, I've struggled mainly when we get plans that aren't fully dimensioned. I don't mind in some cases, the smaller ones, but they need to have enough dimensions so we can get a good. But we'll handle that as new business rather than at this point.
Okay. On the site plan, the true north, that's actually toward the bottom right corner, right? Not up, my understanding. and there's no new front porch. It's just a deck. For the architect, can you confirm that?
On the ground floor, it's a deck.
Okay. Stephanie, have you checked with engineering on a 10-foot driveway cut for a 2-car garage? I think this engineer has some standard that would require a certain width of the driveway cut, especially for 2-car. You would think it's going to be 16 feet or something in line with the garage door. We're looking at a narrow driveway cut. Does it meet the engineering standard?
Let me just ask a quick question to the applicant. Is any changes proposed to the curb cut to expand that?
No, I spoke a little bit earlier to
Mhm.
that. I thought that we had plenty of room to maneuver in and out of the garage, and that giving up that a street parking space there would be a kind of a loss for the neighborhood.
Mhm. And to answer Commissioner Wu's question, these plans were routed to the engineering division, and that specific correction did not come up. But we can certainly ask that specific question. It's possible that it's just something that got missed.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we will close the presentation portion of the meeting. And Stephanie had indicated we have no public comment on this project. So we'll open it up for discussion. And I would like, since this is a cultural heritage permit, for each of us to state our opinion on how it meets the cultural heritage permit, as well as any other comments you might have. Let's start with Commissioner Wu, since we went the other order in the presentation portion. Commissioner Wu.
Sure. And overall, I think it's acceptable. It doesn't have I wouldn't think there's any negative impact to the historic property behind. I'm not a fan of this rotunda look, the round shape stuff over the roof. But it has to be that way. I would say I will accept that. There's no style requirement for this building, so the applicant can pretty much do whatever they want. The applicant could add another flight of a stair, get to a flat rooftop behind the second story addition, still enjoy their roof view, and the roof deck would be over the closet instead of, that would be accessible to be used more. So that's that. On the, Bart, you already asked that question. I'm of the opinion that if we allow people to increase the nonconformity, there got to be something in the code as a reference. Simply rely on the staff to make some justification without a code reference, without needing a minor exception permit is questionable in my viewpoint. How do other people know about this change? We want to treat people equitably and fairly and in the same and similar way. So garage encroachment into front setback, there is a minor exception permit for that. However, that involves with steep terrain. That is not applicable here. I just don't see a mechanism in our current code. I'm with you, Stephanie. I agree with all your arguments. I cannot argue against you. But I don't see a mechanism in our current code to allow this thing. If I'm in the next door neighbor, I want a new development. I want a 6 feet garage setback. I use the same argument. I say, hey, the property line is way behind the sidewalk. Even after the up and around sidewalk around the curb cut, we still have another 2 feet within the right of way. At the 16, I'm proposing the setback to the garage. We have 18, so the car is not going to overhang on the sidewalk. Why not give it to me since you did it to this one? I don't know if we can or we should do that. I think the cleanest way is to make some code amendment. So I don't have an answer to that. Certainly, the ZA should think about this procedural thing and how we can apply this to other people in a fair way. That's all my question. That's all my comment.
Thank you, Jen. And that's why I wanted Stephanie to make sure that it's memorialized and that it's brought to the zoning administrator's attention to consider that when making their decision. Commissioner Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I also share that concern. So I just would duplicate Commissioner Wu's comment just now. You know, when we're giving special provision to every applicant, it kind of diminishes the you know, the development standard over time. So I think, you know, code amendment, something that we can use that is more effective for applicants and the community, it would definitely be a path well taken there. So, but as far as the design goes, I like the overall look of it. I like kind of the East Coast Hampton character this is kind of taking on, especially with the color scheme. But that, you know, color out of there, it still is appealing to me. I struggle with the rotunda element. The applicant has confirmed that it does meet the, you know, rail standard heights and all for a viewing deck, which I think is great, you know, but I also think that it introduces an impact to the sensitive use behind it, and as well as to the community in terms of unnecessary massing. I don't understand what it's supposed to be, other than it doesn't translate to me as a viewing deck. It looks just like maybe a integrated water tank of some sort, with all due respect. It just, I'm trying to, you know, make sense of the elements that are introduced in the design here. And to me, it's interesting, different, but my mind is going right back to sort of an East Coast shingle, you know, character of this design is what is translating to me through the plans the applicant has provided to us. So to Commissioner Wu's point, yeah, I'd prefer to see something square and open railed. It would introduce less massing, yet still work for the intended potential use. If the applicant's already confirmed there's adequate space elsewhere at ground level for HVAC, so I don't see the reason to put it up there. And if it's intended to be a roof deck, have the railings there and do something that has a little less massing. I think a square, more linear design, right angles would fit the lines of the structure, but I'm open to round as well. But as it stands now, it's too solid to me. It looks like it's supposed to be sort of a water tank element of some sort. The gable, the second story addition from the sensitive property to the rear looking over, they see some new massing, the gabled area, the back of that wall. I'd like to see an element there too, maybe a vent, such as the one that's in the front, because it will be visible. I think that would be a great way to break up the plane. You know, a circular vent, just like, you know, element, just like what's in, you know, proposed at the front of the house. I think that would be a nice addition. Landscaping, it's not over the top, but it's minimal. It's minimized so much so that, you know, you're going to see the architecture, which, in my opinion, if some of these revisions can be made to the drawing or to the design, works, it can still work. Some relief to the walls on opposing sides of the garage door face, maybe a window treatment or two, I think would be a bonus if the applicant's willing to do that. I think that would be nice with the white trim. I think that'd be great, just to kind of mirror some of the other window elements that are proposed. The garage itself, as it's designed without any relief on the other walls, it's just like a monoblock to me. It's just all one color, all kind of a solid down there. I like the garage that's on the place now. It's white. I know it's a one car, single access, single vehicle access there. But I like the hardware look. I think it's more fitting for that character, the design of the house. So, you know, maybe a different color, a lighter color, maybe white, or at least introduce some relief windows or hardware. I think that would be a plus. Mr. Crandall, your discussion about the increased width, the non-conforming, I'm with you on that too. I'm glad you put that in there, because I was thinking about that, and hopefully the zoning administrator will consider that as well. I think that's really important. So those two, and those, you know, Commissioner Wu's comment as well as yours both relate to the design, which I think is all relevant discussion here. So I'm happy to have that and share your thoughts on that as well. And that's it for me, my comments. Thanks.
Okay, so Michael, on sheet A 3.01,
Yes.
the project west elevation, you're proposing a vent in the upper gable end, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then it would be the elevation on, where is it? North elevation. Is that the wall you're proposing a window on? Walking
That
down?
would be the, yes, coming from the front door, walking out to the right of the garage, that wall.
Okay,
A window or two, well scaled to match the scale of the other openings, I think would be great. More relief could be provided with landscape, but that would be more of a condition that may not always stand the test of time.
yeah.
So, right. So,
And those were the only physical changes you were looking at, other than the discussion on the roof deck?
on the rotunda,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Guys, I'm a little mixed here. I think the east elevation and north elevation, they're reversed. The front is actually northwest.
So it'd be the opposite side of the front. So at that elevation, if you see in the
That's rear
drawings,
elevation, okay. Yeah, that's actually southwest. That's actually southeast elevation.
okay, so yes, opposite of that.
Okay.
So just to mirror what's at the front, or some element there that would break up that plane.
Yeah, I understood. I mean, there could be a planter or whatever. Stephen,
Yeah.
would you like to comment on what you think? We're giving recommendations here. Do you think any of those have merit?
I think they all do.
Okay.
So we'll, I think the windows are easy. I want to take a look at the deck and talk to the owner, and I don't think the shape is an issue. If that's what it is. I wanted it to be solid though, because I find I do decks and balconies for everyone, and they never wind up really getting used. And I didn't want anything up there with a lot of detail that was going to require high maintenance. So I took a simple approach to it, but the shape is certainly arbitrary. The size I'm going to have to look into. The vent on that rear gable, I think that's a good idea. Or either vents in the opening itself, or I like the little round window thought too. I'll probably repeat that for him.
Is that a volume ceiling in that?
It was volume ceiling in the front, in the bedroom area, with the balcony out in front of it. But I wasn't planning on about a volume in the back. But yeah, I can work something out.
Okay.
maybe I could do the same shape, but just have it a vent.
Very good.
And so I'm you know, I can't find any issue with anything you've talked about. I will say one thing in appreciation of your dilemma on the garage. We looked at what it was going to take to conform, and you know, in our case, it would have required demolishing the front of the house and making the bedroom behind the garage unusable. It would have required, you know, potentially just driving the bulldozer through that side of the house. It would have restricted the entry and the width that was remaining for a door and getting into the front of the house, which even now is, you know, a little bit darker and a little bit less than I would like it to be. So it's I think we were fortunate in having that 10 feet to the property line. So although on paper, when you look at just pure lot size and don't take it in the context of its place, that you know, that will be one way of warding off people that would try to take advantage of this exception. You know, having that adequate city setback, I guess, for future street improvement or sidewalk or something is really the difference here, because if we didn't have that, I don't think we'd be having this conversation.
Certainly. Yeah, I don't think you heard any of the three of the design review members say they were against the approval of doing it. We're just concerned that it shouldn't be overlooked and it should be done properly for you. And if that requires planning staff administratively to issue an exception for that, I think I would be fine with that, as long as it's documented and doesn't necessarily set a precedence for anything else. So I think we, as representing the city, need to do it right for you.
I appreciate
Mike and Jen?
Yeah, well, Mr. Ball, if you want to stay with the current code requirement, I have a simple solution for you. You can keep your single car garage and keep it 10 foot wide or 9 feet wide, and it changes the additional one of carport. Therefore, you're not encroaching into it, because on the ground level, you only have a post. And that's not considered a garage door setback. You can still park your car there. The second level is architectural. That's 15 feet setback. So you don't have any issue. I'm not suggesting you do it, but there is a way to not to break the current ordinance.
We looked at the carport option. The owner had no interest in that.
Great. Stephanie, let's ask you one more time. Have you come up with any more thoughts of how this can be documented and appropriately done, or could planning staff look at it and issue a exception for it?
So I do need to clarify that an exception permit is not required for what they're requesting to do. There is a non-conforming uses and structures chapter of the zoning code, and there is, you know, specific language that talks about additions to non-conforming buildings. And historically in the past, we have allowed for additions to non-conforming buildings to be permitted with approval of a minor architectural permit. And typically through that minor architectural permit, it doesn't necessarily need to go to DRSC. Most often they do not get presented to DRSC, but through that discretionary permit, it allows us to review it, see if there identify whether or not there are any issues, and ultimately those decisions are subject to zoning administrator approval. But that being said, you know, we do have a lot of non-conforming residences in the city, and a lot of times when these requests are being made, there usually isn't a whole lot of issues that we are dealing with. And so really in just an effort to try to streamline things, to allow residents especially to be able to you know, move their projects along in a more efficient fashion, you know, rather than getting tied up within the discretionary review process, which oftentimes adds, close to 6 months to that process before they can even submit to building plan check. That was something that was included within the batch zoning amendments. So under the current ordinance,
Administrative permit, administrative exception permit, architectural exception takes no time at all.
Stephanie,
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that question.
Stephanie, the exception you mentioned that to allow a homeowner to expand up to 2,100 square feet while staying, keep their non-conforming status, was interpreted that the existing non-conforming can stay, but any new addition needs to be conforming. You are essentially reinterpreted that. I know the code probably doesn't say so much detail, but that's traditionally we did. You are essentially reinterpreted that exception to say that the existing non-conforming can stay. Also, the new improvement can also be non-conforming. So that is possible from the code interpretation, but I think we would like to see it to be discussed as a policy issue so we can apply to everybody. Because otherwise, we're letting the staff to make those small discretionary decisions, which I think procedurally it can be questionable.
Well, I think the other catch-22, and I'm sorry we're using your time here, Stephen, to talk about this, but if we've got a 10-foot non-conforming setback, we have just doubled it. We've got now 20 feet wide garage. And I guess you were saying going through the whole discretionary process. I'm just saying, is there something over the counter that the staff can do to make an interpretation and codify it? Or doesn't staff feel comfortable that there is something that can be done without going through the whole discretionary process?
I'm not sure if that question is posed to me, but there is nothing currently in the code that would allow us to be able to approve it and review it with an administrative permit.
Because isn't that what we're doing?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that what's happening here?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question.
By overlooking it and saying he can do it, isn't that violating what you just said, since there's no mechanism to do it by?
I think I need to just clarify my statement. So really what I'm getting at is that with the batch amendments that were, recently approved by the city, it didn't create a separate administrative permit for us to continue reviewing these additions to non-conforming buildings. Essentially, with those changes, it just removed that need for applicants to apply for a separate permit. So as I mentioned, it previously used to require a minor architectural permit, which is a discretionary permit that requires a public hearing, needs to go to the zoning administrator. But through those code changes, it no longer shifted the authority on making those decisions to staff and being reviewed through a separate administrative planning permit. Instead, now it just does not require a planning application.
But the planning commission reviewed those code changes. It wasn't brought to our attention that this would happen. Can you forward that specific language to us and we can look at it?
Sure. I'm happy to send over the link. And again, I think this is something that we, that's certainly something that we can discuss outside of this DRSA meeting. Again, this is my understanding, of the new batch amendments ordinance. So, I don't have all of the information regarding those specific provisions in front of me right now.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Sorry for using your time, Stephen. My comments, I am fine with the comments that both Jen and Michael made regarding the rooftop deck and potentially the gable end vent and some kind of enhancement to that garage wall, be it a window or something. And I think those are items that can be done at the staff and zoning administrator level. But I do want to make sure that since the chain of events, I assume, let's see, Cecilia will be sitting in as the zoning administrator. Is that
That's
correct?
correct, yeah.
I want to make sure this entire exception, and we are not opposed to having that garage approved with the setbacks that are shown. We want to make sure that the city has done the process correctly, and I know the applicant would like that also. So I want to make sure it's completely explained to Cecilia when this comes before the zoning administrator. Because I want to make sure they realize their decision will be based on the facts that are presented to them. Let's see, Michael and Jen, would you guys agree with that summary of our direction to the applicant and staff?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. So we are moving this along, Stephen, that it can go to the zoning administrator with a little work and massaging. And I think staff might want to talk to city attorney also to make sure we aren't missing some thing, to make sure we process this correctly for you. We're
Okay,
here to help the applicant get through the process.
okay. And Stephanie, how much time do I have to implement these recommendations?
This has not been scheduled for a zoning administrator public hearing. So typically we wait to receive the revised plans first, and then we'll take a look at the schedule and specifically what those newspaper deadlines may be.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so we will move along the agenda here. And the next item is actually new business. And I would recommend that we have a discussion at the commission level regarding what we've been talking about this review. It can just be a quick staff summary of and make sure that we all understand what was included in that zoning bundling update as it regards to continuing or expanding non-conforming conditions. Anyone else with a new item of business?
I agree. I think this dilemma can be solved by a interpretation or another look at the interpretation of the non-conform. How do we apply the non-conforming provision of the zoning code? But I think it's important for the commission to understand it fully, and also the staff from that interpretation, the memorialized interpretation become the official policy so the staff can carry it out.
And Stephanie, I'll give you a little, with things that are going on and the potential of having numerous new planning commissioners, who knows how many, that we're going to need to have things written down rather than word of mouth or, oh, we usually do it this way kind of approach. I think
Yeah, I'm with you.
stumbling over ourselves trying to explain things constantly. Go ahead, Michael. Do you have a comment?
No, I was just agreeing with you, Bart. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's close new business. Old business, we have none. Oral and written communication, we have none. So we will look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that the design review subcommittee adjourn to the next regular meeting of the design review subcommittee that will be held on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 at 4 p.m. via teleconference.
Jen, and a second. Motion by Blackwell, second by Commissioner Wu. We'll do a head count. Commissioner Blackwell,
Aye.
Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
and Commissioner Crandall is also an aye. So thank you very much, and we will close the meeting